Welcome to Overlap Reacts, and here are my top 5 takeaways from Euro 2020. Takeaway number 1 is the final itself, and you've got to congratulate Italy on a fantastic performance. They were outstanding through the tournament, and I think after half an hour they made us shrink back into our box, into our sort of what would be very deep shape. We were unable to get out, and they pushed us back on the ropes for long parts of that game, and you've got to give them credit for that. They're an outstanding team who had, to be fair, to suffer a really difficult start to the game. It was brilliant. I mean, that start of the game was out of dreamland. You just thought, here we go. But the Italians recovered, and it has been a little bit of an Achilles heel in tournaments gone by where England teams, even against Croatia in 2018, we just tend to sort of sit back, and then we just couldn't get that counter-attack going, which would have tried to pierce through that Italy defence. Bonucci and Chiellini absolutely outstanding. Verratti and Jorginho in midfield, equally so. But the final itself, it was always going to be a struggle. We were never going to beat Italy easily. It was always going to be that game, a titanic battle that big games should be, where you really just don't give each other an inch. And England players did well to hang in there, honestly. I know there'll be some this morning who said we should have attacked them more, we should have brought Grealish on, we should have had him on, we should have had him on. But I generally think Gareth had a plan in this tournament that was to navigate us to the final, and I think he got it right. It's just that in the end we just fell that little bit short. Takeaway number 2 is England's style of play. I know there's been elements of criticism going back to that Scotland game, which feels like a year ago now, and it wasn't. It was only a few weeks ago when we were getting heavily criticised, and people were saying that Harry Kane should be dropped and Jack Grealish should be on the pitch and we should be playing far more attacking players. I've got great trust in this manager, and I've said that throughout this tournament, that he knows how to navigate his players and his team, that he knows his players really well. And I genuinely think that he played the way in which he knew he could protect that back four, protect the goalkeeper, get that defensive solidity, build a strong foundation of clean sheets. And the defensive record in the tournament was outstanding, to only concede 2 goals in 7 matches. And that was the way in which Gareth thought we could win this tournament, with Rice and Phillips in front of a back 4 or a back 5. And I think he got it absolutely spot on. There'll be those who disagree, the purists who think we should be playing far more attacking ways. But I think if we'd have gone punch to punch with Germany, I think we'd have gone punch to punch with Denmark even, I think we would have come off worse off. I generally think we would have gone out earlier in the tournament, and Gareth's got far too much knowledge and know-how of tournament failures in the past, that realises that once you start conceding goals, it undermines your confidence, and clean sheets had to be the bedrock. Italy was strong defensively, but so were we, and the two teams who, to be fair, really looked solid defensively, got to the final. And so I'm with Gareth's style of play. Yeah, I wish we had a Jorginho, a Verratti, I wish we had a Pedri in midfield, that we could go and play more attacking players in there and control the game, but we just don't have those central midfield players, those genuine central midfield players. And I know what you're thinking, well, why don't you play Foden in there, why don't you play Grealish in there? Foden plays outside right and outside left under Pep Guardiola at City. Grealish plays outside left now, mainly off more forward at Aston Villa. So even their own clubs don't play them in a central midfield position. So that's what we've got to think about. Gareth did what, to be fair, I think he needed to do to get this team to a final. Just fell a little bit short, but don't blame the style of play. Takeaway number 3 are the penalties, and more importantly, the players who miss penalties. I've been knocked out of 5 tournaments on penalties as a player and a coach. I've witnessed all the heartache, seen all the tears. I've seen it all done in different ways. Let's talk about the penalties itself first, in terms of how you choose penalty takers. I know there's been this conversation around, should Saka have taken one? Should Rashford and Sancho have just come on the pitch without touching the ball and not really got into the game to take one? This is all well set out, it's all well planned, but I've seen everything over the years. I've seen the one, who fancies it? At the end of a game, and it's who fancies it, it's who wants to step up, it's who's feeling good at that moment in time. And we went away from that to then practicing them every other day in training, so that we had then lists of players who scored the most, who's taken the most, all that sort of scientific data-led stuff. And I have to say that really, that it's now gone down to the more scientific data-led stuff, not just who's confident in taking them, but making sure you've got your penalty takers on the pitch at the end, making sure that those players have taken penalties before in pressure situations. And I know that then comes back to the situation around Saka. And yeah, I was surprised to see him walking up as 5th penalty taker. I did think it would be one of the other boys, but that will have been well thought out. There is no way that Gareth Southgate has just said, go on, get up there, son, you're 19, I want to see you fail. They've looked at this, they've trained on it, they've practiced it, they've looked at sort of who's got the best connection and striking of a football, who can basically probably fire it into the corners, who maybe kicks the ball hardest, from a side foot sort of penalty type kick. They'll have looked at all these types of things. I know people will say, well, still it doesn't recreate the pressure and it doesn't recreate the situation. I get that. But what else have you got to hang your hat on? It can't just be a whim that sort of he fancies it over there. I mean, there were occasions when I was with England at the end of a game and you'd see somebody say, I fancy one, and I'm thinking, well, we don't fancy you having one. You know, you might be brave and you might show that you're courageous, but I don't want you taking the penalty. You can't hit a barn door. But all these things we've gone on over the years about penalty takers, the one thing I would say is we cannot have scapegoats out of tournaments anymore. We had David Beckham in 98, my brother in 2000, Gareth in 96, Wayne Rooney and Cristiano Ronaldo in 2006. Those days are gone, where we understand a lot more now about the mental health and abuse of players, and the fact that these are human beings. These are sporting actions. They don't deserve abuse for their football performance. And that brings on to the next bit, that the 3 players missed last night have been racially abused this morning, which is just unforgivable. But it doesn't surprise me. I expected that when those 3 players missed, I would be waking up to racist abuse as being the headline this morning, because a few weeks ago, our players, day in, day out, told us that they were taking the knee to promote equality and defend against racism. And yet there were high-ranking ministers in this country came out and said it was okay for the population of this country to boo those players for taking the knee against promoting equality and defending racism. It starts at the very top. If you think about the influence, children are influenced by the parents, the population are influenced by their leaders. And that's something that we've seen in this last few weeks with the validation of booing against taking the knee, when our manager, who we trust, and our players who we trust, have told us the reason they do this is to promote equality and defend against racism. And to me, I have to say that it doesn't surprise me, it doesn't shock me anymore. It's something that we've come to expect beyond football matches for players. And there has to be stronger consequence. People have to be accountable for their actions. Social media companies have to be accountable. But we're stuck on this record. We're stuck on this record month in, month out. We're stuck on it after European Championships. Let's be proud of our players. Let's reward them through high praise for what they do on the football pitch. Irrespective of their religion, their skin colour, who they play for, let's just look at them as human beings who are doing their very best, that have made us proud, that have had the guts to stand up there and courage to take a penalty, and they just kicked a ball the wrong direction and the keeper went the right way. And let's make it a little bit more simple. Takeaway number 4 is my pride in England. Not just the pride in England, but the manager, the way in which he's conducted himself, a leader that's a gentleman. He's been ruthless, but he's demonstrated compassion and empathy. Everything that I would want to see in someone that's leading our national team in a position of real importance. Our players, the representative of this country, they connect with us, they speak to us, they perform for us. And far too often over the last 20, 30 years, the England players, football players, have been seen as the letdown in this country compared to rugby players, cricketers, the Olympians who've had great success. But in the last few weeks, there's just been great pride in this country of what England players have achieved, what this England team have achieved. They've made me even emotional about watching football again. A couple of weeks ago in the stadium against Germany, I don't get emotional watching football matches about football full stop actually. Playing for Manchester United, I never cried. Watching Manchester United, I never cried. I always felt as though, I could control my emotions. But against Germany a couple of weeks ago, I thought it was incredible, that last 20 minutes of the game, thinking that those players were doing something that I couldn't have done with England, that I didn't do with England, and feeling how special it was to be in that stadium. And then against Denmark on Wednesday night, the semi-final atmosphere, the fans back in the stadium. Wow, we need fans back in stadiums, because it just was the most spine-tingling, mesmerising atmosphere I think I've seen at Wembley. Obviously since Euro 96, maybe that game v Holland, which was outstanding as well. So there's a lot to be proud about. There's a lot for us to keep in our memories in these next sort of few years about what happened in this tournament. I know we're dejected this morning, we're disappointed, we're thinking about what could have been, but this is not a tournament whereby we carry that sort of baggage of past tournaments whereby we've underperformed. The lads really performed at this tournament and did us proud. Takeaway number 5 is my own personal moment of the tournament, and it was post-Denmark game and Sweet Caroline comes on, 65,000 England fans, emotional, spine-tingling, goosebumps. It was something that was an out-of-body experience. It was out of this world. We were on television there in the studio, couldn't hear ourselves thinking about how the pandemic of the last 16 months that's still ongoing, we haven't had fans in the stadium, how the sort of suffering and loneliness that people have had to endure over this last 16 months, the fact they've been deprived of football, of live sport, of all the things that we enjoy in our lives and our freedoms, And it just felt a moment that everything came together as one and sort of washed away sort of a lot of the pain that a lot of the country have been through. And it's certainly my moment of the tournament, seeing those fans jumping up and down, celebrating with the team and the management and on the pitch. It was just something breathtaking to be in the stadium. It was a privilege to be there. And those are my top 5 takeaways for Euro 2020. And thank you all for subscribing to The Overlap, to watching it over the last few months. The season has now ended. I'm now going on holiday, but I'll be rejoining you on the second week in August ahead of the Premier League season starting again. See you soon.